No. No.
It's no use, Joe.
Please
Joe, we've
don't.
got to have it out.
No.
I have
Hey.
loved you ever since I've known you, Joe. I couldn't help it.
Hey guys, it's Vero. Welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a while. It has been a rocky past few weeks for me, so I apologize for the super delayed content. YouTube is the best outlet for my sentiments, and I really appreciate the love and support you guys have given me, so I won't be going away or anything. These inconsistencies are just mainly temporary, and I'll try to put out content as much as I can. Anyways, Little Women content was supposed to be in November's video because, you know, November flush and a flannel cure, haha. But I eventually decided that Little Women is best fitting for this holiday season, as I assume that the films that you watch are based off the current audience of present time. I first became aware of the Little Women storyline because of the release of the 2019 version. The production really knew their audience, I have to give them that. The mention of the cast members got me going straight to the theaters without having an ounce of knowledge of what the story is about. And of course, my dramatic self was so distraught that Joe and Laurie didn't end up together. Yeah, I was a hardcore Joe and Laurie stan until I recently rewatched the film again as a 20-year-old, slightly mature version of myself. And also the 1994 version, which according to the people who read the book, that this version sticks to the original storyline. Whereas the 2019 version implemented some elements for a deeper and broader sense of the narrative, because given the conditions of the time when the book was published, there are some restrictions on what Louisa May Alcott may include. So having this new perception towards Joe and Laurie's relationship, I figure why not make a video precisely about that? Though this is only a small part of the Little Women storyline and not essentially the whole point of the story, but I'm fairly interested with the contradicting opinions of its audience. And because the Little Women 2019 version is the most popular one, I will be basing most of its key points onto that version while simultaneously throwing some of the elements from the book, aka the Little Women 1994 version. I still have yet to get out of the longest reading slump, and I know I should be reading the book before coming up with conclusions, but oh well. So let's break down the reasons why Joe and Laurie are better off as friends. So you guys remember the dramatic, heart-wrenching proposal scene, right? So during the proposal, there are two arguments that are being exhibited. One is Theodore Lawrence's side, Laurie, where he profusely begs Joe that they should be together. And the counter-argument is of that of Joe March's side, Joe, which she defends the reasons of how an ill match the two of them would make. And since this is about why Joe and Laurie are better off as friends, let's take a closer inspection of the words that were being thrown out by our feminist icon, Joe March.
Look at me. I'm homely and I'm awkward and I'm odd. And you'd be ashamed of me.
I love you, Joe.
And we would quarrel because we can't help it even now.
Joe and Laurie's relationship is a very playful dynamic. You can see how Laurie has gotten very close to the March family that you can even consider him to be a part of them. Laurie never really had a big family in the first place, seeing as his parents died when he was little. And so having this background and seeing the apparent closeness of the March family members, it made him more drawn to them. He loved being around them. He felt happiness, security, and they filled in the gap of close family ties which Laurie lacked growing up. And having the absence of a parental figure, which Laurie admitted earlier in the book that he was envious of the March's daughter's relationship with their mother, I believe one couldn't help but to seek that maternal feminine presence from elsewhere. And yes, you guessed it, he found it from Joe. Now we've seen Joe's personality. She definitely has a strong personality. She can be quite bold, brave, and outspoken. And if she cares for you, you will get to witness her loyal and affectionate side. And Laurie can see that. Laurie can see the complementary attributes that he and Joe possess. And somewhere there may be occurrences that he seeks that maternal energy from Joe. Okay, this is not one of those Oedipus complex theory, but all I'm trying to say is that Joe feels the feminine presence that Laurie so much craves for in his life. And Joe also wanted that brotherly presence as well. That's why they instantly became friends in the first place. They complement. Laurie would try to act childish, and Joe would scold him and would give him lectures, which Laurie would find a great deal of annoyance towards them, but in actuality would eventually depend on them. He truly admires Joe. He sees Joe as like a mentor, someone who could guide him, and at the same time, someone who could call him out, and also who he can pick a fight on. I mean, let's look at the proposal. They couldn't even have a decent grown-up conversation about marriage without even fighting. And also, can I just mention how I love the part when Laurie was walking away from Joe and Joe tries to grab his arm and Laurie immediately breaks free from Joe's grip? I don't know, I just find it kind of funny because it is so petty. Like, Laurie was so dramatic and petty. I love it. You see, their dynamic is playful and prideful, might I add, which they can easily get away if they're young, but as adults, I feel it would be very hard to have two stubborn people in their relationship who refuse to cave in.
I'd hate elegant society, you'd hate my scribbling, and we would be unhappy, and we'd wish we hadn't done it, and everything would be horrid.
Little Women starts with the March sisters talking about money. They're complaining that the family is too poor for them to get presents. It is clear from the beginning of the film that the March family once had money but lost it. If you take a look at their house, it's not something that a family that came from nothing could afford. It is, first of all, gigantic, and also one other thing is that they have a servant, Hannah, who is a part of their family. And so one could infer that the March family does have means, even just a little bit, but they are not that rich that they live a lavish lifestyle. This contrasts to Laurie's upbringing, who went studying abroad, had some high-end tutors. Like, he was surrounded with a society where money talks. He is used to attend grand events like balls, and he perfectly understands how these people work. And this is the reason why Joe and Laurie's friendship started in the first place. It was the scene when Joe was trying to get away from the crowd of elegant society, and that's when she stumbled upon Laurie and they talked and instantly connected. Joe and Laurie come from different backgrounds. While I know it is not that far off, the two of them have contrasting lifestyle preferences. When they were young, it was easy for these differences to not get in the way of a potential relationship, because being young means not having a full-time adult responsibilities. And so during Laurie's proposal, this is what Joe was thinking. Even though Laurie didn't want to conform to the responsibilities that are tied to his name, he would still nonetheless agree to his grandfather's wishes, like going to college and run the family business. Joe doesn't want that kind of life. If they were going to be together, there should be an overlap between the life Laurie wants and what Joe wants. And based from the situation that Laurie is currently in and Joe wanting to be an accomplished writer, she couldn't see the possibilities of them being in the same realm. These are two highly different worlds we're talking about, and it would be very hard for a relationship to work if they're not on the same page in the first place.
Teddy, I don't believe I will ever marry. I'm happy as I am. I love my liberty too well to be in any hurry to give it up.
This part is going to be very interesting. Jo March is a character that is meant to be non-conforming. She is Louisa May Alcott's way of expressing her thoughts and feelings about women's roles in society. Jo March was never meant to live an ordinary life, as what Marmee said.
You have so many extraordinary gifts. How can you expect to lead an ordinary life?
Jo's character was explicitly created for the purpose of representing the possibility of a different kind of life, because women at the time were restricted to home, wife, and mother duties. We can see that for Jo, it seemed like anything is possible and that she is confident that she can pursue her dream of becoming a writer. And as what Jo said to Laurie in the 2019 version,
I love my liberty too well to be in any hurry to give it up.
That clearly says a lot that Jo values her independence more than the pursuits of romantic love, because this was her reason to not get married. And we can see that Jo has more of a dominant character where she doesn't want to be confined with the pressures of society and the pressures of marriage. And she knows that she will never be the woman that Laurie expects her to be. Jo's speech about women puts everything into perspective. It emphasizes Jo's desire to prove something. Prove that women's value does not merely lie on how she can be of service to a man. which I love how the 2019 version gave us a much deeper perspective onto the expectations of what both Joe and Laurie had to live up to. And when Joe was talking to Marmee about being lonely and how she cares more to be loved, I find it so powerful of Joe to say that, because that was the scene that we can see Joe's vulnerability, up to the point where she was even considering Laurie's proposal just because she was lonely. And I get it, it can be lonely without having someone by your side. And the first time I watched the film, I was screaming, like the fangirl in me who stands Laurie and Joe was ecstatic. But 2 years later, after gaining some perspective, I realized how it makes sense why Joe felt that way, and her response of caring more to be loved proves that she doesn't want to marry Laurie because she loves him, but because of the loneliness and her longing of what once was. Joe expressed her distaste of having to grow up because she sees her sisters as well as Laurie having to conform to the responsibilities and what was expected of them. She had a hard time accepting that everything was changing while she stands still. She wanted childhood to remain, to live in a world they created, because growing up means having to accept the reality, including the unjust systems of the world. And what I like about the Little Women 2019 version is that they acknowledge the burdens and the obstacles that aspiring female writers have to go through at the time, like the undermining, the criticism, the sexism, etc. And the scene where the publisher refuses to buy Joe's novel because the main character did not get married. Similar situation happened with the writer of The Little Women, Louisa May Alcott. She intended for Joe to become a literary spinster, which I wholeheartedly agree that that's how the narrative should be. Her publishers convinced her that it would be unprofitable to have an unmarried main character. And to be honest, I refuse to acknowledge Friedrich's existence. I feel that he was kind of random, which I perfectly understood why, because Louisa had to squeeze him in the story. But I personally feel that it would have been more impactful if Joe lived up to the notion of her being the non-conforming character. But the world at the time wasn't ready for that. Thank you so much, guys, for watching this video. Please do comment down below what you think of Laurie and Joe's relationship. Was it right person, wrong time, or merely platonic soulmates? This is actually very hard. No, very hard is an exaggeration. This is a semi-hard video for me to do because obviously you guys don't know, unless you're my friends who are watching this. Hi. I am a huge fan of the friends to lovers trope, which is the reason why I wanted Joe and Laurie to end up together before. But hear me out. In my defense, I really love how the friends to lovers trope emphasizes falling in love with the personality and the compatibility. Like, isn't it so sweet that there were no romantic intentions at first in the beginning, but once you get to know the person, it just occurred to you. I don't know, this trope is heavily debated in my friend group, and it's really funny how I seem to be the only one who wants that kind of love story, that friends to lovers love story. But who knows? Or maybe I'll be one of those Louisa May Alcott or Jane Austen of this generation, which I don't mind a great deal. I honestly would prefer that way. I'll gladly accept that destiny given the current circumstance, if you know what I mean. Okay, I'm saying too much that are not related to the video, so I'll end it here. And yeah, comment down below your thoughts, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
I think you will marry Joe. I think you'll find someone and love them, and you will live and die for them because that's your way, and you will. And I'll watch.